Hey, everybody, this is Joseph. You're listening to Set to Fail podcast. Well, the show aims to uncover the hack behind failures of successful people so entrepreneurs, young leaders, professionals learn faster and smarter. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Liz Lemarchand, who is now, the president, the co-founder of Devinsider, which is a global community of software vendors. Apart from that, she's also the Chief Operations Officer, Chief Marketing Officer of MediaDev, which is a disruptive marketing firm for software vendors. And interestingly enough, well, she's also the author of Tune In and Dial Out book, which talks about how to win at B2B cold calling. So, and also to our listeners, I worked for Liz. I learned the ropes of B2B lead generation from her during my tenure with MediaDev. So, Liz, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Joseph. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Great. So, I understand your time is valuable. So, get to the questions, and we'll take it from there, Liz. So, in terms of, you have a very interesting take on setting up your business. So, for example, media dev, you're trying to help ISVs, independent software vendors, in generating brand awareness and quality leads across channels. And now you're also, spinning off a new startup, which is Dev Insider, which is really promising in my own opinion. And could you tell me a little bit how, how you come up with this plan, your background, as well as your current business and roles?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that. So, I mean, essentially, the Devinsider project was was initiated because our whole mantra is really what value, what more can we give to our customers? We're really very customer centric in terms of our outlook and wanting to provide people with even better services so that they can enhance their businesses. I mean, we're very passionate about technology, and so many startup software companies, they fail, right? They cease to exist within the first 5 years because they haven't been able to position their products, find the right product market mix. They don't know very much about marketing. I mean, a lot of people have a developer background, create something really innovative, and think that the software is going to sell itself. And as marketers, we know like that's never going to happen. Like, no product in the history of all products ever sold itself, ever. And it really does come down to fantastic marketing. So the Dev Insider community really is about um, having one place where ISVs can go to get everything they need to develop their offers. So whether that be expertise from their peers, um, financing from investors, connecting with technology partners in an OEM type of environment. So really to enhance their feature set through technology partnerships, find resellers. So it's kind of a midway, place between a marketplace and a social media network. And of course, this is all like in the works right now. We haven't actually officially gone live yet. So, but it is
Oh,
really an extension of what we do at MediaDev, because at MediaDev we are helping support our customers through a variety of different services, whether that be on the digital marketing side or whether that be on the outbound, lead generation side, so that software vendors really can get their message out there, get their value proposition in the right hands, do more business with more people, so that their businesses can be successful. So it's really an extension, if you will, of that idea.
oh, nice. And it's really a wide spectrum, especially for digital marketing. And now they have a new coin term, which is Web 3.0. So, it will be interesting how MediaDev and Devinsider evolved to something that would maybe help blockchain marketing and all those
Sure.
futuristic stuff that that's out
Yeah,
there.
I mean,
So um,
technology is
yep,
changing all the time. And of course, we as marketers have to adapt as things change. I mean, I remember when I started working at MediaDev in 2007, we were just talking about SaaS, software as a service, and the
right,
cloud. That was like a new thing. Like people were like, "Ooh, what's the cloud?" And now it's like, yeah, everybody knows the cloud. So that's no big deal, right? And now we're talking, like you said, about blockchain and IoT and all these disruptive types of technologies. And I personally am so passionate about it because it changes the quality of our lives. When you think about all of the new types of technologies that we've integrated just in our own homes, yeah, I mean, it's really vastly improved. The way we do business and how we interact with other people and all that stuff. So I think it's really great timing.
absolutely, yes. And then Liz, if we can step back a little bit in terms of your the challenges, the failures that happened before, life and career experiences, and most importantly, how you were able to overcome those challenges. One example would be, risking it all and, coming from, let's say, France and, working with Philippines. So things like that, if you can walk us through how you, faced the challenges and, how you overcome, our listeners would from that experience.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, I mean, in terms of failures, like I think until you die, there really is no such thing as failure. Certainly there have been challenges and setbacks, and I'm happy to talk about those. I mean, my background was more in, communications and PR and marketing, working in Washington, D.C. and leaving, to move to France was a major life decision, that I took when I was quite young. I mean, I had a midlife crisis when I was about 23 years old. So, I did take some big risks, and of course, there were challenges along the way. Setting up in a new country, learning a language, essentially going from having, uh, you know, uh, friends and family around me to, basically being on my own. Um, and then moving, into a totally different culture and having to find my way to be able to assimilate. But I do think that, every experience we have, it takes us closer, to our mountain, so to speak. And yeah, of course, there have been, ups and downs kind of along the way, but I think that's what helps us to grow. Those kinds of key experiences, like in our life. Like I think, for me, it was really more about, like, I didn't want to not do it and then regret later in life, like back at that moment and saying to myself, like, what if I had moved, so it basically pushed me to take a leap of faith and just to go ahead and do it. um and I do think one of the most interesting things that I've learned is, I think we assume when we're from a culture that everybody understands that culture. And when you travel and you've experienced and been exposed to other people, you realize, like, no, actually, you can't assume anything. Everybody has a different way of thinking, has a different way of doing things. Um, and, working with people in so many different, cultures, environments, countries, languages, has really been a very, yeah, eye-opening experience in that sense. And but I have realized that there are some, like, fundamental human dynamics, regardless of culture. And for me, that really comes down to, like, everybody that I've come into contact with, regardless of social stature, regardless of income, regardless of education, regardless of anything. Like everybody is walking around with some kinds of limiting beliefs, and that for me is the key area where I believe if we want to be able to learn from these challenges, it's really about like what are the limiting beliefs that are not serving me, and how can I negate that negative self-talk to create empowering beliefs. And the way I've done that has really been on my own like personal development journey. So it's been, I don't know, the 20 years in the making. Right? But I think with every experience that we have, it is a learning opportunity. And it's really, what is the story I'm telling myself around what happened? Is it something that's serving me to grow and move forward, or is it holding me back from reaching and achieving what I want to achieve?
Oh, awesome. I think that's the reason why you're very successful in what you're doing, which, actually, I'm assuming it also rubs to the current startup that you're working on, which is Devinsider. So I'm assuming as well that there's a lot of challenges along the way in building the brand and things like that. So from a startup perspective, what are some of the challenges you're facing right now, or some of the things that you could do differently in order to speed up the process, as well as achieve operational efficiency. It will be a great insight for our teams, for our listeners, so they can also um, imitate some of your best practices. If you can touch point on that as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, creating a startup is kind of like being between a rock and a hard place because you've got a great idea, you're really passionate about it, it's something that you want to do, and you also don't have that many resources, to be able to go fast and get it out there really quickly, unless you're willing to sacrifice quality, which is usually, not necessarily the best idea, especially if your goal is to provide value to some end user type of audience, right? So, I mean, obviously for me in doing this whole startup venture, it's, I'm somebody who likes to check things off the list. Like I'm just by nature wired to get, I'm highly productive in that way. And it's been very difficult, when there are things that are out of your control, that, and you just have to be patient and accept that, there is an abundance of time. And even though you would like things to be done yesterday, like there is, there are certain steps that need to be done in a certain way, and you can't just necessarily like get the shortcut to make it, much faster. So for me, what I've really been working on is an abundance of time mindset, right? So what that, while yes, I do need to continue to push things forward, it's that small, consistent action over time that creates really big differences. It's kind of like weight loss. If you want to lose weight, you can't just decide, like, okay, I'm losing 50 pounds, and then tomorrow you wake up 50 pounds lighter. Like, unfortunately, it's a process, right? And it can be painful at times too. And you have to make some sacrifices along the way, until they don't become sacrifices anymore, and you just are able to see the results and celebrate the results, if that makes sense. So, staying motivated, I think, is critical. It's not always easy, but I also do firmly believe that whenever you're stepping outside of your comfort zone, that means you're growing, right? So having a startup business is an uncomfortable process, and that's a good thing because it means that you're growing. It means that you're moving towards your achievement, even if at times it feels longer than what you would like.
Totally. I agree 100%. So, and also in terms of um, like from a analogy perspective, you're like a seed, right? You get planted, and
Exactly.
eventually, you grow and bear fruit. So, um, Now going to
Yeah, but
industry.
and sorry to cut you off, but yeah,
No,
I
don't
totally
worry.
agree. We are like a seed, and you can get really frustrated that the seed is not growing faster and go and dig up your seed to see what's going on, and then actually your seed is never going to grow, right? So it is that patience at the same time is also really important because most of us lose patience, and that's actually fail because they get impatient with the process and they're like, okay, forget it. And then they just give up, right? Whereas if you
Yeah,
keep going until the plant grows and bears fruit, like then you actually get to enjoy the fruit.
yeah. That
So,
and that's the reason why there are a lot of half-baked products, software, whatever, whatever product it is, and people walk away from it, unfortunately. But if they just try to be resilient and pursue further, they could have created a very good, get very good product as well as customer experience, in my opinion. So yeah. So in terms of industry, let's talk about your industry experience, and from your perspective, apart from what we've discussed, what are some of the challenges of other companies that you're trying to solve? So, for example, are you trying to optimize lead generation, doing data, or do you focus more on creating assets, content, affiliate marketing? Maybe if you can tell us some of the challenges of companies that you're trying to solve on a day-to-day basis.
yeah, I mean, especially in this business context, the global economy obviously has taken a downturn. In this particular point in time, I think many of the businesses that we work with, their main challenge is how can we do more with less budget? So, obviously, that's always going to be an issue during an economic downturn. People are always looking to make sure that they can have guaranteed return on investment. Unfortunately, lead generation is not an exact science, and we're not NASA, right? You can't predict, like, okay, how long is it going to take for me to get some leads? Like, it just depends on so many different factors. What we try to do is be really 100% honest and transparent about what we're doing. We go into each campaign with an anticipation that we are going to be successful at doing whatever it is that we've set out to do. And we also can't predict certain factors that come up. The important thing for me is making sure that we talk about those factors, that we're completely 100% transparent, and we work with our customers to find solutions. I think a lot of businesses in general are very wary of working with outsourcers because that's not been their experience. Their experience has been, oh, it's one big black box. I have no idea what I'm paying for. Creates frustration because there is no alignment around expectation. So I think one of the things we're trying to, how can we help support our customers so that they can generate leads, create more brand visibility across channels faster, because everyone wants leads yesterday, right? And unfortunately, even though people get marketing budgets that are reduced or cut because of financial constraints, at the end of the day, sales is the only thing that's going to save them. So you can't just completely turn off all of your marketing efforts without shooting a bullet in your own foot, because because if you just stop everything, you're not going to continue to generate quality leads for your sales team to continue, selling product. So we really become an extension of our companies in that of our customers in that respect, because we want them to be happy with the service that they've purchased, because that's what's going to keep them coming back for more services in the future. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I agree. With things happening right now, it's really trying to help each other. And from an economic standpoint, trying to be, as cost efficient as possible, so everyone can still, function doing the business. So, in terms of, you know, I know there's a lot of case studies that you've, experienced and, you've done. So, but could you share, one or two that were very challenging and with good reason you were able to flip it around and become a successful story, with either MediaDev or Devinsider.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, like I said before, sometimes a customer might have a very particular target audience that they want to go after, think is kind of low hanging fruit. And then, it has occurred in the past where we start to target that audience and actually we find that there isn't an opportunity to do business there. And then it's like you said earlier, being able to pivot, being able to be agile, being able to put forth solutions quickly so that our customer then can still see the value in what we're doing instead of just plowing through. A lot of people just say, like, oh, well, that's the objective. So I just have to keep going. Right. But, if it's not working, it's really much better to talk about it, to find other types of solutions that you can put in place. And a lot of times that means, well, what if we try this other target audience? Or would it be possible for us to, and then, we try to think of several different potential options of what we can do, whether that be to convert the campaign into something different, or, if it's to have a different deliverable, whatever it is. So, I mean, I can't necessarily think of a very concrete example right now, but our way of working is always to be agile, and I think being open to that, just generally speaking, no matter what you're doing. I mean, the more rigid we are, the more that we're very hard against whatever it is we're facing. Um, it's kind of like a storm, right? If you have a storm, if you see, you're in the Philippines, if you have a storm coming through, I mean, that's why palm trees bend. Because if they were rigid against the storm, they would crack in half, right? But most of them bend with the wind. They move with the wind so that they can be resistant because of their resilience. So that's really what we try to do, is within our resilience, find other options, other solutions so that we can then still provide the value that our customer is looking for. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about achieving that's on a piece of paper. It's about, increasing sales opportunities. It's about, helping customers to be able to do more business. That's really what they're looking for, regardless of what the tactic or the strategy is that we put forth. There are various different marketing services that we can provide. For me, it's the end goal that we have to keep in sight, and understanding why that's so important to our customer. If a customer wants to expand into a new market, why do they want to expand? What's their why, right? Um, that, for me, understanding that is really at the heart of everything, because, somebody can tell you what to do and you can do it. That's fine. But are you providing value? Um, that pushing through and getting it done? Not always.
Yeah, yeah. I like that, like flexibility, especially when you're starting. Back then, when I was doing sales, I only listen to myself and trying to sell whatever I have, despite of customers' situation or circumstance. So nowadays, really, it's about trying to know their pain points first. Should be inclined with their budget, and then also with this with these layoffs happening, and the war, and also there's a lot of variables attached, which really needs to be a compelling solution and future proof type of solution for businesses to stay sustainable. So in terms of you know from your perspective, and this is more talking more about the Philippines and all, since you've been working with with the Philippines for a number of years. From a technological standpoint, from your experience, um, what what do you think would be the priority based? I know that internet connectivity is an issue, but what do you think would be a good priority? Is it starting a data center or a data farm first, or should we work on the technological aspects of the connectivity issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. I mean, personally, I think the fact that there's a lack of infrastructure in certain areas of the Philippines is definitely a problem that I would attack first if I were the, dictator of the universe, I guess. And the reason for that is, COVID really changed the landscape for a lot of people. And I do have to say, like, we were really lucky because we were able to pivot super quickly to have people working in a work from home setup. And we also had people, that were located in provinces that they couldn't work from home. They couldn't work from home because their internet connectivity was not stable enough. They didn't have a high enough bandwidth to be able to, have customer facing calls, be able to search easily and quickly for things that they needed, use a CRM, et cetera. And, that for me is really terrible because to see people who were just not able to work from home and essentially very early in the game have to drag them back to an office setup because they really didn't have a choice. It was heartbreaking to see. There were a lot of people that had to go through a lot of barriers to overcome fear, fear of COVID, especially in the very early months. Back in 2020. And if they had had a better internet connection at home, they wouldn't have had to do that. They could have just easily and safely worked from home. And now because of COVID across the world, people are looking. I mean, digital nomads, like that's a thing. Remote work is a thing. There are more people now that are looking for work from home setups than ever before. The Philippine government, I know, made some kind of decree to have people go back to office setups, and there are still people that really don't want to go back to work from an office environment because they've seen the benefits of working from home. Who wants to fight through Manila traffic, right? I mean, I get it. Um, and people in Manila, pretty well served in terms of connection, but we had a number of people who moved into remote provinces because they wanted to get out of Manila during COVID. And now, they're kind of stuck because yeah, they either, work with a relatively crappy internet connection and try to get away with it, or, they have to move back to Manila is essentially what it comes down to. So, in my opinion, I think having universal coverage, high, bandwidth coverage everywhere, um, really should be a priority.
Thank you for that. And hopefully, a lot of the folks can listen to this as well. Coming from the local government units, as well as the private companies that takes care of the internet uh, productivities and all. So hopefully we can see an uptick of and of the efficiency. There are a few noticeable things that, in my opinion, had happened. So, for example, like Gcash, the fintech industry, they were able to help, ease up payments as opposed to 10 years ago. In order to pay your bill, you need to go to a Meralco center or whatever. So I think we're on our way, and hopefully, considering all the economic, political climate, we're going to be able to upgrade this aspect very quickly. So, what actually leads me to my final question. In terms of data privacy, we've experienced a lot of, you know, vulnerabilities. We've seen local ransomware attacks here in Manila. Personally, my mobile phone is receiving texts about casinos and stuff. So, do you have some, you know, recommendations or suggestions? Let's say, you know, something that we can emulate from maybe from France or the U.S. That can easily be implemented here in the Philippines to help cybersecurity.
So in France, we have a lot of government issued advertisement warning and really educating them about the types of messages they receive, what to open, what not to open, what to click on, what not to click on, how to determine if something is legitimate or not. There's a ton of education because cybersecurity and fraud, unfortunately, are exponentially increasing everywhere. I mean, and the frauders are getting savvier and savvier each day. So, I mean, I think from a user perspective, you just have to be super vigilant. Obviously, know kind of the do's and don'ts, like don't ever give your password to anybody, don't ever give your bank codes to anybody, don't open up suspicious looking emails. Don't click on any links whatsoever. I mean, I get a lot of spam types of messages that look really legit. And regardless, like, I mean, you always can look at the sender name, like the email address. Yeah, if it's an email. But regardless, I never click on any links, right? Like never, ever, ever. If I get a message like from my bank or something saying, oh, you need to do this, like I go to the bank site, I log in and I see if there's a message there, or I contact my banker. Like I don't hesitate to triple check. I'd rather be extra safe than to have somebody, empty out my bank account. And I actually had this happen to a friend of mine in the Philippines just recently. I think it was last week. His wife answered the phone and she said, oh, but the guy was just so nice. And, their bank account was completely emptied. And,
Oh my God.
yeah, people are really nice. Like fraud, they're really nice people, So you would think that a frauder, like I think our perception of somebody who's committing a crime is like they're bad people, right? But that doesn't mean they can't be nice to you trying to get your password on the phone. So, right. So I think, just it, sometimes we're afraid, and I think part of this is just our conformity mindset. And I think in the Philippines, you guys are just a particularly loving, trusting people. Like you're just very kind, just generally to all people, which is a beautiful thing. It's really a beautiful thing. And um, being okay to maybe be in it for a moment what might be considered rude, and being okay with that. Like you don't have to be like you know a mean person to somebody on the phone, but I would very easily say to somebody like, okay, I'm going to need to verify that, thank you very much for your call, I'm going to go log on to verify that for myself, goodbye, right? Instead of like, because they always present themselves as being somebody who is there to help, who needs the password because there's been some problem, right?
Yeah.
So
And they're
it's really
becoming,
it's really really important, like not to fall into that trap just because you think like, oh, I should be polite to this person because they're being nice to me. Does that make sense?
yes, yes, absolutely. And they are being more creative. And as far as I've heard, they are even like official registered, let's say, call centers. They're not just, someone that,
Yeah.
calls using, broadband Wi-Fi or whatever. They're really inside offices. So, which is, I think, the scary part because it's already a syndicate, right? and
Right.
also they're becoming more and more creative. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine, they got hacked. Their home Wi-Fi got hacked because of Roblox, where
Mm.
their kid, uh, you know, plays with someone she don't even know, don't even have a Facebook account or whatever, and they, did a challenge of giving each other's IP address, and they were able to, uh, you know, become vulnerable because of that. So,
Mm.
and the good thing right now, I think, nowadays IP addresses are dynamic, and they were able to solve it at their level with the technical support. But it's scary, right? They're out there with playing with kids, predators or whatever, which is really alarming. That's the reason why, we wanted to make sure we also uh, touch point on this topic because it's a um, growing challenge, and I think a lot of our listeners could really benefit from other people's opinion and perspective, and not just uh, just fall victim into these types of circumstance.
Yeah, and you bring up
So
a good point. I mean, speaking to our kids about it is super important. I think sometimes as parents, we want to protect our kids and we think that we're doing them a favor by not talking about it because we're shielding them from it. And actually, we're not we're not actually serving them if we pretend like it doesn't exist. And, even young kids can understand like we need to be safe. And so these are some of the things that we do playing an online game, for example, right? So, yeah, it's a good point.
so and this is the last question, and in terms of some of the productivity business apps, what are the top three that you can't live without working in today's era?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the real key is not to have too many of them because because sometimes we're kind of overwhelmed with like too much stuff, right? So I really do try to keep things to the bare bones. I mean, in terms of productivity, a lot of the stuff I do is actually relatively old school. Like I have a to-do checklist, and every single morning I'll come in like on a piece of pen and a paper and write down like, okay, what do I want to achieve today? Right. And then I check it off my list. Like I told you, I'm kind of wired for the checklist. So that's me. That may be my Gen X, style. But we do use Office 365. I think everything is basically in one place for that. We're using obviously Teams and Yammer and a bunch of different tools kind of within that umbrella. I mean, I do use a lot of, Outlook reminders and things like this to help me to stay on track. I also highly recommend having time chunking during the day. So, and what I mean by that is literally blocks of time that you schedule for specific tasks. And then what I do is I turn off all the notifications. So I'm turning off, any type of, you know, um, Teams alert or anything like that, anything that could cause an interruption. So I turn off my phone and I turn off alerts and I turn off everything so that I can focus on that particular task and just get it done. Because when you have uninterrupted work, that's when you're the most productive. And when you're kind of multitasking and scatterbrained and all over the place, you may be doing a lot of different things at once, but are you doing them well? Right. So I'd rather just focus, have that time to be purely focused and in flow and get something done, especially when I do things like writing. I do a lot of content writing. I publish a lot of things like the book that you mentioned at the beginning. I mean, I can tell you when I was writing Tune In and Dial Out, like I needed uninterrupted time where I could just completely focus and get into the flow. And I would usually listen to some music at that time and just not allow for interruption. And, it doesn't mean you have to spend 8 hours doing just that, but, making sure that people on your team understand like, hey, I'm going to be not available from this time to this time. I'll contact you afterwards, so they're not like freaked out or whatever. If you really do need to be somebody who's connected in that kind of way, just so that you can get those most important tasks completed successfully and well.
Awesome. Uh, Thank you, Liz. I believe there's a lot of value that you can bring to the table, especially helping companies in the modern era, since you have a multinational team. So for the benefit of our audiences, where they can find you, like website, email, LinkedIn, as well as the book. Um, if you can share to our audiences.
Yeah. Well, the easiest way is just to go on to the at MediaDev.com. We've got an extensive resource library there. You can access actually our book order form there. It's exclusively distributed on Amazon. A landing page on our website where you can click and then you can get access to the book either in digital format on Kindle or a paperback version that you can order. I definitely am on LinkedIn, so my profile is Liz Lemarchand. MediaDev has Twitter and Facebook pages as well, so you can look and find us there. MediaDev has a company page on LinkedIn, as does Devinsider. So yeah, we're basically everywhere. So just look for us, but all those links are available on the MediaDev website.
Great. And to our listeners, we'll include the links to this description. You can easily check it out, and most likely we'll upload this to YouTube as well. So hit notification bell, like, and subscribe. And that's it for now, Liz. This is a very fun session. I hope to have you again on the show. Thank you so much for your time today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Joseph.